Hey everybody, this is Dream, and before I get started, you guys smash that like and subscribe button. It really does help the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. With that, so we have a pretty interesting Major League Baseball slate today. We do feature some pretty good games in this one. Most of the totals for this slate are pretty similar, so that is very interesting today. With that said, we are going to like some of these pitchers today. It's a pretty interesting pitching day, uh, which is a little surprising on this one. But overall, it's a pretty good slate. So let's go ahead and get into our pitchers here. Actually, let me talk to about the weather and stuff first. So there's no weather issues in this game slate, and all the games have a 8.5 or 9 game total, with the exception of the Colorado Miami game and the Chicago Cubs New York Mets game. Those two have lower totals at 7.5 total runs. All the others have 8.5 or 9. So do keep that in mind today as well, and that can play into our fantasy decisions. With that said, I do like the slate. I don't think the pitching is super ideal because nobody's got like a great matchup, but it is an interesting slate for pitching. Our top three guys, actually our top four here, in Manga, Yamamoto, Burns, and Verlander, all have a lot of upside in this slate. It's going to be hard to like differentiate from one to another. I think Burns is probably in the best situation for Baltimore, as he is facing the Yankees. This game does have a high total, just like all the games on this one. He has the most strikeout potential today, and that definitely gives him some potential on this one. If I was picking between Manga and Yamamoto, I would go with Yamamoto. I think he's just a little bit favorable today. The strikeout rate is the same for both, but I think that he's been a little bit better against uh, a little bit better than Emma Manga has been thus far. And while their metrics and their data are virtually identical, and even their outcomes of their first 5 games, I think both of them have a very similar range. I just think Yamamoto has a slightly higher upside here on this one, just maybe by a total of 1 fantasy point. And then Verlander for Houston, he's also very interesting today. Now he's facing Cleveland, which is a riskier situation as Cleveland doesn't strike out much. But he's been pretty solid his first 2 games, so I do think he's a viable option. All four of these guys have a lot of upside on the slate, and they all have a little bit of risk. So, but they're all good plays for your P1. As for your P2 options, Cutter Crawford and Buto are going to be your top overall guys. Now, Crawford is facing San Francisco. I do think that San Francisco has some bats that we do like a little bit today, but he's been pretty solid, at a 15 to 20 fantasy point range is doable here. He definitely carries some risk, but his strikeout rate has been decent enough that he has some potential on this one if he can limit the earned runs. As for Budo, I do like Budo a lot today against the Cubs. Budo has been up and down so far to start the season, but he does have a decent enough strikeout potential here to give him some good GPP2 option. He's it does carry some risk here because the Cubs do have some good hitters, but I don't love them today, so he's definitely in play. Then I have 2 Hail Mary plays in Gill and Munoz. Now, Gill has a matchup against Baltimore, which is just going to be hard to ignore here. He has had some decent games, and his strikeout rate has been better than expected, but he's just giving up too many earned runs, and I think Baltimore is going to get to him. For Munoz, for Miami, he's got the benefit of his first game against the Cubs, where he managed a 7 strikeout game and he had 19 fantasy points. That is definitely doable again, though his price has come up some. He's facing Colorado, which is definitely the worst team on the slate by a lot. But his strikeout rate is a little concerning because in the minors this season he has 8.62 earned run average, and he really hasn't done much there. So he definitely carries some risks today, but he's kind of a Hail Mary play. And then if you want an extreme play, if you want to get more extreme than him, then you could look at Andrew Heaney for Texas against Washington. Washington's been better than they look when you think about them as a fantasy team. You don't look at Washington as a team that's typically pretty scary here, but they've actually been decent this season so far. And while Heaney has had some upside, he's had some really bad games. So he's definitely a Hail Mary kind of extreme GPP play as well. But he's dirt cheap, so he can help you pay up at the batting positions. With that said, I don't think the total the prices on guys today are extremely crazy. though they are crazier than I'd like. They are decent on the slate, so I do think we're going to get some good options throughout the slate. Looking at catcher, Adley Rutschman is the obvious overall top option. He is pricey today at $5,400, but he's cheaper than he has been, and he faces a favorable matchup where if he can get a home run, he can definitely pay off here. He doesn't necessarily need the home run to pay off, but he's definitely a viable option. Good value play here is Yanier Diaz for Houston. He also looks really solid today. He's been pretty good so far this season, and he has good upside in this matchup here against Cleveland's pitching. Um, if you wanted to go cheaper, you could look at Keibert Ruiz for Washington. He's kind of a one-off play here. He hasn't been particularly great in the few games he's played, but he does have some good metrics for this game. Jonah Heim also in play for Texas as a good one-off here, as he's also hit the ball pretty well to start the season. And then Connor Wong is your Hail Mary play. He's just a dirt cheap um, option here for Boston, and he's actually hit the ball very well so far this year, so he definitely has some potential today. Doesn't even need to hit a home run, but he's nice and cheap, so he definitely helps you there. Looking at first base, the Stubs have a very favorable option here with Nate Lowe for Texas. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. He's going to be a core play for me right now, at least. He's hit the ball very well so far. He's only played nine games so far, but he has been good, and he did really good yesterday as well against Washington. So I look for him to be another solid opportunity for him. Then we're going to look at Ohtani. Now, Ohtani is obviously very expensive, and he's going to be hard to roster today at the price point, but he is interesting on this one. Ohtani has been absolutely phenomenal start to the season. I look for him to continue that here. He has a tougher matchup than I'd like, but he is interesting on the slate. A couple of other value plays. You could look at Ryan O'Hearn for Baltimore. I do think Baltimore will be a relatively popular stack, but it's getting very expensive. O'Hearn is actually one of the cheaper options available on the team. Lamont Wade Jr. For San Francisco is a good one-off for San Francisco. He's dirt cheap, and he definitely has some good contrarian opportunity around where Nate Lowe is same price point kind of range. And then if you want an expensive play but you don't want to pay for Ohtani, then Christian Walker will be the guy. He's hit the ball very well. He's been hitting home runs, and he's got a lot of upside in this matchup here for Arizona, and a one-off option against Yamamoto. Looking at second base, Mookie Betts carries the top overall play here. Now, this position is very expensive. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of value play here. So, him, Simeon, and Altuve all draw a lot of upside in this one. I do like Altuve a lot. I also like Simeon a lot. I think all three of these guys are relatively interchangeable. Now, I think Simeon actually has the most upside, but he's also the riskiest as he's not the best batter compared to the other two, excuse me. So, but they all really do have good upside on this one. We do have some value plays, but they're not great values. Reyes for the Miami Marlins is one of them. He gets a favorable matchup here against Colorado. Don't really expect a home run here, but I do think he gets some hits, and that can definitely help him pay off fantasy-wise. Gleyber Torres for New York Yankees is a good one-off for the Yankees. He has not been particularly great. Just a 220 average and no home runs, but he's had some good games lately, and he does draw some good metrics for this game. And then Estrada for San Francisco is another one-off for San Francisco, and a positive matchup. He does have some home run potential. He's got some upside here. He's cheap. But none of those value plays really jump off the page as great options. They all have different, you know, Reyes has the upside of just a good hitter. Torres is just kind of a Hail Mary play, and then Estrada is a good home run potential guy. So you got different options there, but they're not great at that position. Moving at third base, Rafael Devers jumps off the page as a great play today. His price is still a little too high for what he's done so far this year. He's been inconsistent, but he is getting hits, and so that's helpful. He does need a bit more than just a single hit, though, to pay off here, so he's definitely capable. If he can get walked too, then that would definitely help him here. He also does have a good matchup. Some alternatives to him would be Bregman for Houston. Now, he finally hit his first home run. He's been looking solid from a fantasy perspective for a while, but he hasn't had a home run. His price is coming down surprisingly, but he definitely has some good metrics for this game. I also like McMahon for Colorado as a one-off guy for Colorado. He's had some absolutely fantastic start to the season. He's been one of the lone good options for Colorado so far, and he looks really solid today. And then Westberg. Now, he's very expensive. Baltimore is going to be hard to roster because of their expensives, expensive plays. But Westberg has been solid, and he's definitely worth a look on the slate. A couple of value plays at this position. Another position with the value plays are rather limited, but Josh Smith for the Rangers carries really good metrics for this game, and he's been pretty solid lately, so I think he's a great option here. He's cheap, and he can play third base or shortstop, so that gives him some upside on this one. Maybe another option for the third base, though, is Chapman for San Francisco. I do think San Francisco is kind of sneaky today as they have a couple bats that can do well, but they're high risk, high reward. Looking at shortstop, we do like Corey Seager a lot for Texas. Now, Texas will be popular today, and I think Seager is probably the one guy you can kind of get away from, be his price being so high. But Gunnar Henderson also looks absolutely fantastic this year right now. He's been playing very well, a lot of home run power, and he's got good upside in this matchup. But if you want some other options, Mookie Betts is in play here, as well as Francisco Lindor. Lindor does look like a good one-off for the Mets, though he's expensive and he has not done a ton lately. Josh Smith can also play here at shortstop, and I actually do like him more here because the expensive plays are more expensive than they are at third base, and so that gives him some that gives him a little bit more security here at shortstop. But honestly, you can go with either position there. Looking at our outfielders, our top three here are going to be Corbin Carroll for Arizona. He's a one-off play here. He's been starting at the back of the lineup, which seems to have hurt him some, but we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. The metrics are off the charts, though. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is a very good option for Miami. He has had some really good games against Washington last week, and I look for him to try to get on board here in a pretty solid game here against Colorado. I think this can be higher scoring than we think, and he's one of the best options on the team. And then Jordan Alvarez is a good very good expensive play here for the Astros, as he's one of the top overall options. But we do have some nice value plays at this position. Alex Call is going to be a cheap play for Washington. He's just $2,500, and he has been absolutely solid in his first couple games starting. And well, he definitely carries some risk here as long as he has some home run upside here. He's going to have some potential. He hadn't played many games yet, but he is interesting at this price point, dirt cheap in this matchup. Evan Carter also for Texas also looks really good here in outfield. He's pretty priced fairly. He's also had some good games lately, and if he draws a start, he'll be somebody I would consider a lot here. I also like Jarren Duran for Boston. He has been pretty good so far this season. He's not hitting home runs, but he's scoring fantasy points in a lot of different ways, and he's got a lot of potential today. He's a little bit pricey on this one. Lee for San Francisco is another one-off for San Francisco that you could consider. Now, he has not favored particularly well the last few games, but he definitely has some good upside in this matchup. Ryan O'Hearn can play here at the outfield as well, and I think he's a very sneaky way of getting to some Baltimore plays and playing Nate Lowe, so I do think he fits well in the outfield. And then Toscar has been phenomenal lately for the Dodgers. He does draw good metrics and home run upside in this game, so he's definitely worth a look, though he's expensive. Cedric Mullins is another guy that I like a lot from Baltimore. If you can go with a Baltimore stack, then he would definitely be somebody I would consider there. A couple other guys that are also Starling Marte for the Mets, Jock Peterson for Arizona, Abreu for Boston, the outfielder, Santander for Baltimore, and then Jake McCarthy for Arizona. A couple of sub 3,000 price plays would be Alex Call, who I already mentioned, Taveras for Texas there in outfield, Yaz for San Francisco, and then Nick Gordon. If he draws a start today for Miami, he would be somebody I would consider as a outfield Hail Mary punt play. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our stacks here. So we have some really good stacks on this slate. It's not the cheapest slate for stacks, but it's a decent slate for stacks. For Texas, Houston, Baltimore, and the LA Dodgers, going to be top overall stacks. So Texas is going to be my favorite stack, as there's lots of different ways you can do it, and there's some cheap guys in the back half of the slate, especially with Lowe, Garcia, Lowe, Taveras, Josh Smith, and Heim. You can kind of mix and match those guards, even Carter, and you can kind of stay off of Seager and Simeon if you want, and also even Garcia, as they are pretty pricey on this one. I'd probably go with right now Seager, Carter, Lowe, Taveras, Josh Smith, and Heim, as my top 5 guys there. Looking at Houston, though, Alvarez, Tucker, Altuve, Bregman, Diaz, and Looper, Fido, assuming he draws a start, would all have some upside here. You're going to have to go away from one of these expensive plays likely to make a Houston stack fit, which Looper helps you do that. And then Diaz is a great catcher for them as well. Looking at Baltimore, this is going to be an expensive stack. There's really no way around it as everybody's priced up here. Henderson, O'Hearn, Rutschman, Mullins, and Santander, top overall guys. But Kowser, Westberg, and Urias have some upside as well. For the Dodgers, this is also an expensive stack, but they have some value plays that you can mix in to help with the prices. With Betts, Otani, and Toscar being top overall play, and then Pages, Kiki Hernandez, and Will Smith all have some upside here as well. You also get a nice little boost to the right-handed hitters in the Dodgers. Otani would be the one guy that I'd probably move out there if I didn't have to use him. Uh, for Miami, Chisholm Jr., Reyes, De La Cruz all have some utility here, and Gordon and Bell are nice and cheap and playable. This has got a boost to the lefties as well, but it's not a super expensive stack, which is nice. San Francisco, Lee, Wade Jr., Conforto, Yaz, Bailey, and Ahmad. This is a sneaky stack today. I mean, they're kind of weird, San Francisco is, but they do have some potential today. For Boston, Devers, Duran, Abreu, Valdez, and Wong is a great stack as it's going to have a mix of expensive and value, and you can mix in other players from other positions to fill in the roster. And for Washington, Call, Abrams, Winker, Menendez, Ruiz, and Senzel are all in play, though I think Call and Abrams are the top overall options, with Call being my favorite play from the team. Arizona, Carroll, Marte, Peterson, Walker, McCarthy. It's fairly expensive stack for the upside. Not a lot of upside there. For the Cubs, I don't like this stack at all, but if you're going to use a Cubs stack, then Hop, Horner, Morel, Bush, and Swanson would be the guys, with Tauchman being a contrarian option. For the Yankees, Judge, Soto, Volpe, Torres, and Stanton are the top ones. All the righties get the boost today. But it's an expensive stack and can be hard to roster. For Cleveland, Josh Naylor, Quan, Jimenez, Brennan, and Bo Naylor are the top options there. For Colorado, McMahon is a great play. And then if you wanted to go Hail Mary-ish, you can go with Blackman, Cave, Tovera, Doyle, and Diaz. And then for the Mets, Marte, Lindor, Alonso, Bader, and Martinez have the best upside from those players, but they're very limited overall. So with that said,